pray. Lord, have mercy upon us. Lord, have mercy upon us. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in these islands. That thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands, and of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen.
Morning, members.
Confirmation of the minutes.
Members, the minutes of the 8th of March have been circulated. Are there any omissions or amendments? There are none. They'll be confirmed as printed. The minutes from the 11th and the 13th of March have been deferred.
Messages from the governor.
There are none.
Announcements by the speaker.
The only announcement this morning is that we have received notification from the member, the Deputy Opposition Leader, that she will be absent today.
Messages from the Senate.
There are none.
Papers and other communications to the House.
There are none.
Petitions.
None.
Statements by ministers and junior ministers.
There are none.
Reports of committees.
There are none.
Question period.
There are none.
None. Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches.
Does any member wish to speak to that? There are none? Yes, congrats. Okay, we recognize the Leader of Opposition. Honourable Member, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This has more to do with a worldwide issue that is going on. Condolences, and I know that the House, we may not be, but I will speak to the Premier about this here. I heard in the wee hours of the morning, around 4 o'clock, actually, that in New Zealand they suffered from a massive. 40 people were killed in church. 49 now.
Yes. Yes.
And people worshiping at a mosque. And it seems that around the world, churches are being unceremoniously attacked. I watched one of the clips where one of the gentlemen that was involved was videoing himself with these particular, maybe Minister Keynes knows what type of gun it is. I don't know. They were machine guns, that's for sure. And he had writing all over his guns, and actually filmed himself walking into this mosque and just offloading on innocent people. And so, as we look across the seas, I just would like to take note that this House remember the families. Remember New Zealand, because they've taken a strong stance against this. They have, many of them are people who immigrated into New Zealand, and the leader there was very vociferous about the fact that these were our people. And so let's bear them in mind as we think about it. And I guess the last I saw was 40 people, and now I'm hearing 49. So the last time they had something anywhere even close to that was way back in the 90s, and they changed their gun laws back then. So let's keep them in our prayers, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Unfortunately, religious freedoms are being challenged all the time. Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure all members of the House would like to be associated with the condolences that will ultimately go to the people of New Zealand around that, and thank you for the opportunity for bringing that to the House's attention. I would like to ask that the House know condolences for the Bean family. Alan Leroy Bean, who was interred just Wednesday, the father of the former leader of the Migratory Party.
Yeah, they were done already. You know.
They were done already.
Yeah, they were done already.
I was informed that we had not done it. So, yes.
Yeah, we done them. We done them. Yeah, yeah, we done them. Yeah.
Very well, Mr. Speaker. Just
No problem.
to still
associate yourself.
Associate,
Yes.
everyone in the House with that, of course.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize Honourable Member Pearman. Honourable Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm actually sure the whole House wishes to be associated with the marks of both the Leader of the Opposition and the Deputy Premier in respect of New Zealand. And I would certainly wish to be associated as well. On a much lighter note and far closer to home, on a positive note, if I may just commend AIG on its 100th birthday. AIG is a global player that chooses to call Bermuda its home, and we should be extremely grateful for that fact. At the helm, we have our very own Bermudian Kathy Duffy. Many of us here in this House had the privilege of listening to her speak at International Women's Day a few days ago, and she is an example of how our tiny, tiny island can have international global superstars. So thanks to Ms. Duffy for her leadership. Congratulations to AIG for its 40th birthday. Obviously, there is also another Bermudian there, Mr. Brian Dupereau, who will be known to all in this House. I think it isn't hyperbole for me to say that AIG puts not only the B into international business, IB, but it also puts the I as well. It is a global player, and we're grateful for them, and happy birthday, AIG.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? No other? You recognize the Honourable Government Whip. Honourable Member.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and thanks. I just actually want to rise on a positive note on a couple of things and go back to my aviation roots and have this House send a letter of congratulations to Delta Airlines as they celebrate their 50th anniversary for flying to the island this month. And that would make them actually probably the currently the longest serving air service, and they were actually the second air service to start flying to Bermuda on a regular basis. I now would also like to go on, and I was hoping to save this until the end of the actual football season, but PHC just did it again so early and took the Premier League championship up there, and it actually happened this past weekend. And I think that you would also like to be associated yourself with the Somerset Eagles that were promoted, Mr. Speaker, because it seems at least.
Bigger news, hey, Mr. Swan?
But yes, I would like to have congratulations sent to the PHC Zebras, who I make no qualms, and I would like to associate the MP for the area, who is also a Zebras fan, which is MP Neville Tyrrell. He became a Zebras fan the moment that he was elected to represent C26. And so we welcome him to the family as well. But once again, this makes 2 consecutive years, and we will be we'll be making it a 3-peat in the upcoming year to go.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize our member, Commission.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I would ask this House to send condolences to a constituent of mine, Mr. Glenn McClinton Bean. He passed away about a couple of weeks ago, and he's a pillar in that community there, which borders Middletown and the rest. He was a well-known man in the trades and had his own business, and he's going to be sorely missed. I heard the reference to AIG. I want to associate myself with that. And with respect to Ms. Duffy, I'm very proud of her because she took the opportunity I said Duffy. She took the opportunity during the Women's Day, as did some in the PLP Women's Group, to highlight the racial disparity that occurs between, the lack of racial inclusion in the highest levels of the Bermudian corporate sector, principally of black Bermudians, and I want to commend her for that. And the ladies of the PLP Women's Group, it may not be the exact name that they go by, because they also point out the racial disparity between black women and white women in the community as well. And it made for sober reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Recognize Honourable Member Famous. Honourable Member.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the House can send congratulations to the new Speaker of Parliament in Virgin Islands, one of your fellow speakers. Mm-hmm. There was a recent change of government, and he's a member of a, how can I say, prominent fraternity. Mm-hmm. His name is Honorable Julian Willock. Mm-hmm. He's a son of the soil of the Virgin Islands. He's probably early 40s, so you have a lot of time to train him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Does any other honourable member wish to speak? There are none. We move. Mr. Swan, you moved a little slow that time. We recognize Mr. Swan down there in the East End.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I certainly would like to be associated with those remarks of congratulations sent to my family team and the only team I ever played league football for, the Somerset Eagles, on gaining promotion. For anybody from a community, you know how important those milestones are, and I know my rivals, my real rivals, a little bit west of there, are trying to hold on by a thread. But I just want to assure them that they can come down to our area across the bridge and watch a little football in the top league next year, should things not work out for them.
It would happen.
And also, Mr. Speaker, I'd be remiss of me, I would like to send birthday greetings to my mother, Barbara F. Swan, who I'm sure listens to this broadcast on a regular basis and enjoys what she hears in the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other member? No other member? We'll move on. Sumner?
Oh, very good. Sorry about this figure. Matters of privilege?
There are none.
Personal explanation?
There are none.
Notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance?
There are none.
Introduction of bills?
There are none.
There are none. Notice of motions?
There are none.
Orders of the day?
Orders of the day. And again, for the listening audience, today we continue on with the annual budget debate, and this morning we'll start with the Ministry of Home Affairs, and there are some 3 hours put aside for that, and the call on the Minister of... You're going to introduce? Oh, okay. Call on Minister Wilson. Will you stand in for the Minister of Finance?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House do now resume in Committee of Supply to consider the estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2019-20.
Any objections to that? No objections? Would the honourable member who's going to chair the House for us this morning come forward?
You too. Good morning, members. We're here to consider in the Committee of Supply to consider the heads that fall under the Ministry of Home Affairs, heads 32 and 79. And at this time, we'll call on the Minister. Minister, can you move the heads, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
I move heads 32, the Department of Planning, and 79, Environment and Natural Resources, be now taken under consideration.
Thank you. It's been moved that heads 32 and 79 be considered. Minister, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It gives me great pleasure to present the budget for Head 32. The Department of Planning, found on pages B308 to B312, C15, and C20 of the approved estimates of revenue and expenditure. Mission, Mr. Chair. The Department of Planning believes in balancing beauty and progress to create an enduring island community. To that end, the Department strives to responsibly serve the people of Bermuda to ensure the sustainable management of the natural and built environment. Applying its core values of teamwork, communication, trust, and proactivity, integrity, and responsibility, the Department is accountable for the following: the preparation of development and local plans, balancing of development demands and environmental protections, monitoring and enforcement of development regulations, management of building activity through a building permit system, proper implementation of the relevant building codes to ensure life safety by way of inspections of projects under construction, and timely intervention with respect to compliance issues. The Department seeks to provide its services and carry out its tasks in an efficient manner with transparency and consistency with reasonable time frames.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to interject that this is a 3-hour debate, which will carry after lunch until 2:45. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Expenditure review. Mr. Chairman, the Department of Planning's total budget allocation is estimated to be $3,376,000 for 2019-2020 fiscal year. The estimate represents an increase of $72,000, or 2% higher than the budget of 2008-2009 fiscal year. This change is due primarily to a negotiated 2% increase in salaries for BPSU employees, which can be found in line 1 on page B309 of the budget book. However, I will highlight some of the more important decreases in the budget. Training can be found on line 3 of page B309, has been reduced by $12,000, or 67%. This represents specific one-off scaffolding training and is not expected this upcoming fiscal year. Advertising and promotion, found on line 6, has been decreased by $18,000, 86%. This decrease is due to the implementation of the new government's e-Gazette. The remaining amount will be used for the promotion of the Bermuda Plan. Professional services, found on line 7, has been decreased by $23,000, or 44%. Over the past financial year, consultants were recruited to fulfill certain functions because of the inability to fill the substantive posts. It is anticipated next year that we will have all posts filled, thereby reducing the need for professional services. Material and supplies, found on line 12, has been decreased by $14,000, or 27%. It is anticipated that once the new system, EnerGov, is fully implemented, there will be a decreased need for supplies associated with paper and printing, such as printed materials, etc. Revenue summary. Mr. Chairman, the Department of Planning estimated revenue found on page B310 for 2019-2020 fiscal year is estimated at $1,360,000. The estimate represents a decrease of $51,000, or 4% less than the budget of 2018-2019. This change is largely attributable to line 1 planning application fees, with a decrease of $114,000. It is expected that there will be a reduction in major projects this upcoming financial year. We are not aware of any upcoming major projects, and it is these projects that pay substantial application fees, largely based on square footage and requirements for an environmental impact statement. Capital expenditure. Mr. Chairman, the capital expenditure budget for the Department of Planning can be found on page BC15 of the budget book. The capital expenditure is to allow for the development and implementation of the new EnerGov, Electronic Application Submission Program, and the purchase of related ArcGIS mapping tools and office equipment to support the program. EnerGov will then replace the current aging BMIS system. While EnerGov project was due to be completed in 2018-2019 financial year, the final delivery of the project is subject to agreement upon the successful completion of an internal audit. It's estimated that approximately $200,000 of the total $413,000 capital expenditure budget will be carried over into 2019-2020. Budget to complete the project. Completion of the project is expected before September 2019. Manpower, Mr. Chairman. The Department of Planning employee numbers are outlined on B310 of the budget book. There are 33 full-time employees, of which 5 posts are currently vacant. The recruitment process has begun for 4 of these posts. The vacant posts are PID 320001, Director, PID 320002, Administration Officer, PID 320017, Planner, Forward Planning, PID 320039, Heritage Officer, and PID 320023, Electrical Inspector. Temporary relief staff has been engaged for PID 320017, Planner, and PID 320039, Heritage Officer posts. As the need arises, PID 320023, Electrical Inspector, is filled on a contractual on-call basis. The Director's post is currently being performed on an acting appointment basis, while the Administrative Officer's post is being internally advertised. The total budget for staff salaries is $3,216,000 and represents 95% of the department's budget. Output measures. Mr. Chairman, the performance measures for the department are presented on pages B311 to B312 of the budget book. It is the goal of staff to work diligently towards achieving the department's performance targets. This is challenging to achieve in those sections, such as forward planning, where there continue to be vacant posts. The performance measures of each business unit with the department are presented with an anticipated average increase of 5% in output as a measure of performance due to expectation that all vacant posts will be filled in this upcoming fiscal year. A major factor in achieving the increase in output will be the completion of objections to the draft Bermuda Planning Statement 2018, as well as the completion of the draft local plan for Northeast Hamilton, both forward planning functions. Major achievements, Mr. Chairman. The draft plan 2018 was released for public consultation on the 3rd of December 2018. The document is a statement of sustainable development policies to manage development in Bermuda going forward. The public consultation process and resolution of objections will continue into the 2019-2020 fiscal year. The Development and Planning Amendment Act 2018 commenced on the 1st of September 2018. The amendments to the Act specifically address the enforcement of planning legislation and, in particular, unauthorized development, and has already had a significant positive impact on compliance matters. Plans for the upcoming year, Mr. Chairman. The Department of Planning is committed to the following projects. 1, the completion of the public consultation and objections process for the draft Bermuda Plan 2018 in order to present any matters that remain unresolved after negotiation to the tribunal for determination before presenting the tribunal's resolutions to the minister. 2, to initiate community engagement for the future development of local community plans in order to allow the Bermuda Plan to become a living document that can be updated on a continual and ongoing manner as required. To publish the draft local plan for Northeast Hamilton and to release this for public consultation. 4, to publish an updated World Heritage Site Management Plan for the sustainable economic, social, and environmental protection of Bermuda's World Heritage Site. I'm sure that's of particular interest to you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. To complete the EnerGov electronic applications project with a go-live date anticipated in September 2019. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, of the Department of Planning presentation, I would like to thank the dedicated members of staff under the Department of Planning, including Ms. Victoria Pereira, Acting Director, who is in the House today, Mr. Larry Williams, Assistant Director, Mr. Chris Bully, Building Control Officer, and their respective teams. It has been a true pleasure to working with them since receiving responsibility for Home Affairs November of last year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll now move on to Budget Head 32, which is the Department of Environment. Thank you.
Excuse me, isn't it?
Point of clarification.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Budget Head 79. Is that what we're doing now? Environment and Natural Resources?
We have Head 32. The minister just dealt with. We're going to page 315 for Head 79.
Head 79. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Continue on, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it gives me great pleasure to present the budget head for Head 79, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, found on pages B315 to B323, C7, and C20 of the approved estimates of revenue and expenditure. Yes. The mission, Mr. Chairman. The mission of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources is to, and I quote, protect Bermuda's environment and responsibly manage the sustainable use of its natural resources, unquote. Expenditure review. Mr. Chairman, the total current expenditure for the department is estimated to be $8,352,000 for 2019-2020. This is a 2% increase on the expenditure for the budget year 2018-2019. Analysts by cost center. The department has 14 business units, as shown on pages B316 of the approved estimate of revenue and expenditure. The cost centers are as follows, Mr. Chairman. 1, cost center 89000, administration. 2, cost center 89010, marine resources. 3, cost center 89020, marine conservation. 4, cost center 89030, marine heritage and health. 5, cost center 89040, marine enforcement. 6, cost center 89050, terrestrial conservation. 7, cost center 89060, veterinary services. 8, call center 89070, Animal Control. 9, call center 89080, Plant Protection. 10, call center 89090, Agronomy. 11, call center 89100, Pollution Control. 12, call center 89110, BAMS, BAMS Administration. 13, call center 89120, Aquarium and Zoo. 14, call center 89130, Museum. Mr. Speaker, I refer to the general summary of the department on page B316 of the approved estimates of revenue and expenditure. The department's budget has increased by $131,000 to $8,352,000 for the budget year 2019-2020. This increase is mainly due to the 2% salary and wages increase for the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 period. This is the reason for the increase reflected through all of the department's cost centers. In order to offset this increase, the department reviewed and prioritized its needs and requirements, resulting in the reduction of its communications budget held in General Administration Call Center 89000. Further consolidated budgets managing fuel, tools, and equipment were redistributed from object codes, consolidating such with the administration cost centers to specific sections for improved budgeting oversight. The result is a reduction of the general administration budget by $27,000, or 2%. Further, the pollution control budget, cost center 89100, was reduced by $138,000, or 18%, by the elimination of a grant for marine conservation-related projects. The loss of this grant will be offset by filling the 2 vacant posts in the marine conservation section and focusing efforts on monitoring and surveillance priorities to minimize negative impacts on protective corals and seagrass beds. Mr. Chairman, on a specific note, I refer to subjective analysis of the current account estimates on page B317. Salaries found in line 1 have increased from, $5,049,000 in 2018-2019 to $5,328,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is an increase of $238,000, or 5%. That is due to the negotiated BPSU salary increases. Wages found on line 2 have increased $130,000, or 11%. This increase was part due to the reallocation of funds into wages for a marine technical support post, and after a review of a number of BIU post job descriptions. Local training on line 4 has decreased from $9,000 to $5,000, a decrease of 44%. This level of funding will continue to allow the department to meet its mandatory requirements for health and safety. Travel, line 6, has increased from the 2018-2019 original budget $7,000 to $17,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is an increase of 143%. This is to ensure that technical staff can participate in important compliance meetings for trade, as well as to take advantage of specialist training opportunities at conferences overseas. I hope that is noted, that extreme increases to ensure that our staff are properly trained. Those numbers may, I think, Mr. Chairman, be alarming to people, but we're trying to keep our people properly trained for the very delicate role that they play in keeping our environment protected. Communications on line 7 has decreased from $132,000 in 2019 original budget to $69,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is a decrease of 48%. This is largely due to the reduction on phone services, both landline and mobile, as well as data lines. Professional services on line 9 have increased slightly from $158,000 in 2018-2019 original budget to $164,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is an increase of 4%. The budget will provide further required funding for a wide range of services, including international memberships to bodies governing fisheries, building security services, medical services for animals, board and committee fees, local and international consultants for environmental research and compliance. Repair and maintenance on line 11 has decreased from $150,000 in 2018-2019 original budget to $142,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is a decrease of 5%. This is largely due to a reduced need for building repairs in the upcoming year. Insurance on line 12 has decreased from $13,000 in 2018-2019 original budget to $5,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is a decrease of $8,000 or 64%. This is largely due to a reduction in the department's fleet. Grants and contributions. On line 18 have decreased from $403,000 in 2018-2019 original budget to $253,000 in the 2019-2020 estimate. This is a decrease of 37%. This is largely due to the elimination of the marine conservation grant mentioned earlier in my brief. Revenue, Mr. Chairman. The department generates revenue from a variety of licenses, permits, services, and entrance fees, including license of dog, lobster, and fishing activities, water rights, crop storage fees, and visitor admissions to the Bermuda Aquarium, Museum, and Zoo, known as BAMS. As noted on page B318, the total revenue for 2019-2020 is $1,493,000, which is a decrease of $145,000 from last year. This is largely attributable to the reduction in the collection of dog license fees. A specific note are the following. Cost code 8493, dog licenses on line 8. Expected revenue from dog licenses has been reduced from $536,000 to $263,000. This reflects the expected level of revenue for dog license collections rather than the 100% compliance. I can assure you that every effort will be made by the department to work towards having every dog in Bermuda licensed at the appropriate fees paid. Cost code 8541 on line 20, lost lobster traps. Expected revenue has been reduced from $9,000 to $5,000, and it is anticipated that fewer traps will be lost due to better management practices being instituted and observation of traps. Cost code 8549 on line 22. Pesticide import certificate. Expected revenue has been reduced from $12,000 to $5,000, largely to reduced requests for new pesticide importation, and so a reduced level of assessing such applicants for health and environmental risks. Capital expenditure, Mr. Chairman. As noted on C7 of the budget book, a capital minor works budget of $250,000 will provide for the general maintenance and upgrading of the headquarters facility and plant protection laboratory located at the Botanical Gardens, the Coney Island facility for marine resources management and enforcement, the Government Agriculture Marketing Center in Prospect, the government kennels, and improvements in the 200 acres of government-owned nature reserves. Due to the need for specialized facilities and education displays, $100,000 has been allocated to the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo to repair several enclosures and numerous exhibits. Capital expenditure, Mr. Chairman. The department has no planned capital acquisitions of equipment or vehicles this fiscal year. The department has recently taken possession of 2 replacement vans and is in possession of completing refurbishments to one of its primary enforcement vessels. As such, the department is in a good state to fulfill its mandate. Grants and contributions. Mr. Chairman, the department engages several local entities to undertake specialized studies as noted on page C20. Professional local service contractors and consultants include the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences for ambient air and water quality programs for $200,000 and the Bermuda Zoological Society's Amphibian Research Project for $43,000. These funds allow for specific studies to be undertaken that enable the department to meet its monitoring requirements mandated by the Clean Air Act of 1991. The department also provides the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals a grant of $10,000 to assist with the delivery of their programs. Manpower. Mr. Chairman, the department has 79 full-time equivalent posts as shown on page B319 of the Approval of Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure. This is comparable to the 2018-2019 budget. The department has filled several key vacant posts, including hydrogeologist, an assistant plant technician for the plant protection laboratory, and the foreman for the Terrestrial Conservation maintenance crew. The recruitment of the new veterinary officer is being finalized. These posts will provide critical capacity to the department and allow for the effective delivery of badly needed services and programs. Output measures, Mr. Chairman. A complete tabulation of output measures for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources can be found on pages B320 to page B323 of the approved estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2019-2020. I will now briefly describe notable trends in performance measures for this year's work program. Mr. Chairman, Cost Center 89000 Administration noted on budget page B320, 19 protected species licenses were issued to local and international researchers within 5 working days in fiscal year 2017-2018. Research topics include a very wide range, including investigating coral gardens, climate change, and temperature impacts on corals, effects of grazing and pollution on seagrass, whale fluke identification, and videography, and sea turtle ecology, feral chickens, skink, lichens, and non-native geckos. It is expected that this trend will continue with some 25 licenses and permits being issued in 2019-2020, with 100% being processed within 5 working days. A number of invasive pests continue to have a tremendous impact on Bermuda's ecology and farming sector. So far this year, the department has received 170 new requests for assistance in culling test birds from the public. an average of 12 every month, which is a slight increase in comparison to the original forecast of 2018-2019. 7,328 pest birds were culled, feral chickens and pigeons. Culling effort was increased on behalf of local farmers who were experiencing crop damage from feral chickens. Additionally, efforts were increased targeting the pigeons within the city of Hamilton and those flocks found at local dairy farms. Cost Center 89010 Marine Resources, noted on budget page 320. Yes. Mr. Chairman, sustaining our local fisheries is paramount. This past year saw the development of an action plan to improve data collection from our fisheries in order to facilitate fish stock assessments that will more effectively guide management decisions for our commercial fish species. Research projects on commercially important species such as red hine, black grouper, and bait fishes have been ongoing. Mr. Chairman, Call Center 89020 Marine Conservation, noted in the budget book on page B320. The Marine Conservation section reviewed 23 planning applications pertaining to marine environment and 1 dredging application, presenting them to the Marine Resources Board within 4 weeks of receiving the application. This is slightly less than the revised forecast for 2018-2019. It is expected that in 2019-2020 that the trend will continue, with 25 applications being received and 85% being responded to within 20 working days. The marine habitat assessments undertaken by the section has decreased from 75 to 30 in 2018-2019. This reduction reflects the reduction in the workforce capacity from 3 to 1 due to resignations. Mr. Chairman, Call Center 39030 Marine Heritage and Health, noted on page B320 to 8 and B321, sorry. Marine heritage consultations and information requests were slightly less than 110 anticipated, but remained stable with 98 in 2017-2018 and 92 in 2018-2019. A significant portion of international information requests to this section were around the theme of the Bermuda Triangle. Imagine that, which has steadily increased year on year. The percentage of protected dive site moorings in place at the beginning of the season was reduced by 100% from 100% to 80% due to increased activity and prioritization of repairs required during the spring and summer of 2018 at heavily visited shipwreck sites such as Western Blue Cut. It is anticipated that in 2019-2020 there will be 40 dive site moorings in place, and 100% will be assessed within 60 days and repairs made in readiness for the seasons. This year, the team secured and tested a new hydraulic underwater drill to upgrade the reef pins for many of the moorings in highly visited sites. It is fully expected that the readiness of the moorings will be at 100% in the coming season, Mr. Chairman. The Department and Ministry is most grateful to the Stemple Foundation for its support on this important project. Mr. Chairman, Call Center 89040, Marine enforcement. Noted on budget page 321. Approximately 385 vessels have been stopped and checked with attention to daily tagged limits, size, and species restrictions. So far this year, the wardens investigated 18 complaints from the general public concerning illegal fishing activities by fishermen, both licensed and unlicensed. Call center 89050, Terrestrial Conservation. Noted on budget page B321, an important part of the Terrestrial Conservation section mission is to provide environmental and habitat assessment advice for the Department of Planning and members of the public for all matters related to terrestrial conservation zones. By the end of the fiscal year, the section expects to undertake 135 consultations on planning applications, environmental impact assessment, scoping reports, conservation management plans, and proposed landscape schemes. This remains similar to previous years, as do other measures such as tours, invasive species removal, and new plantings. Call center 89060, Veterinary Services, noted on budget page B321. Activities of veterinary services were primarily customer-focused, with animal imports and revisiting the conditions of entry for various species, occupying much of the section's time. Participation in the island's plan for more responsible use of antimicrobials in conjunction with the Department of Health, helped to move this vital initiative forward. Our focus is the use of antimicrobials in veterinary medicine and agriculture. Also impacting veterinary services were items related to legislation affecting dog control. The legislative amendments, public and stakeholder education, and officer training needed to make the new law work. The department also monitored farm production and animal welfare on farms. Call center 89070, Animal Control, noted on budget pages 321 and budget 330, B330. Over a 12-month period ending in September 2018, Animal Control handled 17% fewer overall complaints and 12% fewer complaints that related directly to public safety than the previous 12-month period. During fiscal year 2018-2019, Animal Control saw an amended Dogs Act 2008 finally become implemented. During the lead up to the legislative amendments, Animal Control minimized the collection of dogs unless animals were acted in a manner so to label it, I quote, dangerous. We remain in a period of transition, so the full impact of legislation is yet to be seen. However, there have been significant increases in the number of requests to keep a restricted breed, as well as a number of incidents of biting to people and animals. Call center 89080, Plant Protection. Noted on budget page B322, the number of items inspected originally forecasted in 2018-2019 was to be 1,334,787. It has now been revised down to 1,281,396, a slight increase of the 1,000,000 from the 1,222,160 imported plant items inspected during the same period in 2017-2018. The increase is due to the number of banana shipments inspected during the time which were found to have pest issues. Of these, a total of $167,377 are expected to be in. I'm sorry, 167,307 are expected to be inspected in 2018-2019 compared to the 189,592 items intercepted in 2017-2018. This decrease may be a result of the suppliers being informed of past pests and disease issues and effectively managing them. Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a minute there. Mr. Chairman, in 2018-2019, thus far, 11% of these incoming items were found to be infested with plant pests or disease upon arrival. The interception of these international pests at our borders speaks to the continued need for vigilance on the front line to ensure Bermuda's protection from pests, which can be potentially a dramatic impact on our island's agriculture and tourism industries. Mr. Chairman, Cost Center 89090, Agronomy, noted in the budget book on page B322. The value of produce, goods, and services handled by the Agricultural Service Center is expected to increase to approximately $203,000 from the original projected $195,000. The total number of customers served at the center is also expected to increase to 2,100 from the original 1,600. This increase reflects an increased need for agricultural products available and the crop storage services provided by the center. The Agricultural Service Center expects to serve 2,300 customers in fiscal year 2019-2020. Cost Center 89100, Pollution Control, noted on budget pages 322 and 323. There have been a total number of 19 exceedances of the outside air quality to date for 2018-2019 due to particulate matter less than 10 micrometers in size, i.e. PM10. 16 of these exceedances occurred on East Broadway, where vehicle traffic is the main cause of one exceedance at Prospect, near Times Bay, one at Cemetery Lane, near Belco, and one at Bayou, St. George's control site. It is important to note that for the calendar year 2017, and again for 2018 at East Broadway, vehicle emissions in particular exceeded the annual PM10 limit stipulated in the Clear Air Regulations of 1993. The four main freshwater lenses, Mr. Chairman, that are monitored by the Pollution Control Section and in the process of having their output measures improved, are in the process of having their output measures improved. Currently, all lenses remain at full capacity and continue to be underutilized, with the excess rainwater captured overflowing to the sea. All reported spills of oils and fuels were monitored and cleaned up according to government guidelines. All stakeholder responses to the Department of Planning were provided within the required 10 working day period. It is expected in fiscal year 2019-2020, an estimated of 50 applications will be received by the Pollution Control Section, and 100% of these will be responded to within 10 working days. Mr. Chairman, call center 89110, BAMZ, Bermuda Aquarium and Zoo. I'm sorry, Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo. Administration, noted on budget page B323. Total visitors expected to visit this facility was really forecasted at 75,000 in 2018-2019. However, this has since been revised down to 72,000 for 2018-2019, and is expected that it will increase to 75,000 in 2019-2020. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo underwent its inspection for its external accreditation with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums in December 2018. Following the results of the inspection, BAMS fully expects to receive its accreditation again in April of 2019 as per normal. This would mark 25 years of continual accreditation, which is a remarkable achievement, and certainly we should congratulate the staff for being so consistent with their standard of excellence at the aquarium for all these years, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure the whole country would agree with that. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Zoological Society, in combination with the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo, continues to strongly support schools throughout the island with conservation and science education classes tied to the Cambridge curriculum. A new record of 8,800 student experiences were provided on the facility, on Trunk Island, and on the floating classrooms, MV Endurance and MV Callista, engaging students in the natural history of our island. Demand for classes continues to be strong, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, call center 89130, Museum, noted on budget page B323. Number of specimens added to the natural history collection decreased from 400 in 2018-2019 to 300, reflecting the retirement of the museum collections officer. However, use of the museum's resources increased from 300 to over 500 persons. Mr. Chairman, I now go into major policy changes. I would like to highlight policy changes that were made during the fiscal year, including improved care of dogs. The Dogs Act 2008 and the Care Protection of Animals Act 1975 were amended to improve the care and control of dogs, provide enforcement tools to enforcement officers, and to ensure a robust regulatory framework for the management of dogs to both protect the public and protect the well-being of dogs. A change in policy towards illegal dogs leading up to a change in legislation resulted in fewer dogs being seized, increased number of animals made available for adopting, and fewer euthanasias. The management of migratory pelagic fish. Mr. Chairman, the management of migratory pelagic fish, such as wahoo, yellowfin tuna, and billfishes, is conducted on a regional basis. These species are a valuable component of Bermuda's commercial and charter fisheries. The senior marine resources officer participated in meetings of the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna, known as ICAT, and led negotiations for appropriate quotas and catch limits of these species for Bermuda and the other United Kingdom territories, members of ICAT. Collaboration with the Zoological Sea Commission in areas of mutual interest continued. Serving the commercial fishing industry, Mr. Chairman, the Marine Resources Section has worked with the Commercial Fisheries Council to develop a revised policy pertaining to the licensing of commercial fishermen and fishing vessels. To clarify, I simply To clarify simply, these processes and improve the transparency of decision-making. The final draft of this policy is currently under consultation and will become active in 2019-2020 fiscal year. Development of an integrated roadside vegetation management strategy. Mr. Chairman? Yes. Following its investigation into the glyphosate-based herbicides, the department drafted an integrated roadside vegetation management strategy that proposed the most effective vegetation treatment on target specific plant species that pose a risk to road safety, while minimizing negative impacts to the environment and the public. The strategy is being provided to the Ministry of Public Works for consideration. Participation in the development of a national plan to strengthen Bermuda's efforts towards better stewardship of antimicrobials, Mr. Chairman. The growing frequency of resistance by microbes to medicinal treatments that are the, as in quote, big guns of medicine is a major global concern identified by the World Health Organization. As a result, nations of the world have been tasked with developing national plans to combat antimicrobial resistance. The Veterinary Services section has been working closely with colleagues within the Ministry of Health towards a national plan to strengthen Bermuda's efforts towards better stewardship of antimicrobials, with our focus being in the veterinary and agricultural sectors. Improving water quality of the island's inshore waters, Mr. Chairman. The Pollution Control Section implemented new regulations under the Water Resources Act 1975 to address sewage discharge from recreational boats and to create new sewage discharge zones. Mr. Chairman, I'll now go into plans for the upcoming year. Mr. Chairman, this year, the department will focus its efforts on increasing local food production and assisting industry in reducing production costs. These efforts will be led by the 5-year National Crop Strategy and Action Plan and the Marine Resources Strategy. Notable projects will include plans to improve the island's cold storage of crops, strategies to assist our declining local bee population, the undertaking of pesticide residual studies of crops, amend legislation to regulate and encourage aquaculture and backyard farming. Mr. Chairman, building on the work done in the past year, the Marine Resources Section aims to complete the first in a series of fish stock assessments during 2019-2020, focusing on economically important spiny lobster fishery. Research projects on commercially important species such as the red hine, black grouper, and bait fishes will continue. An integrated marine resources enforcement strategy will be completed, incorporating new ways and means to more effectively minimize the abuse of our marine resources and protected habitats. Mr. Chairman, work will continue in monitoring and managing of local pests, disease and invasive species that threaten the island's economic, social, and economic security. In addition to the ongoing control of invasive lionfish, pest birds, and noxious weeds, improvements will be made to the island's biosecurity in order to prevent the establishment of new invasive species that threaten agriculture, the environment, and human health. Mr. Chairman, the Endangered Plants and Animals Act 1976 will be amended in order to ensure the island's compliance with International Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species for Wild Fauna and Flora, known as CITES. Mr. Chairman, a new exhibit focusing on conservation and research on Nonsuch Island will be opened at the Bermuda Aquarium Museum and Zoo in the winter of 2019. Numerous smaller jobs are also in the process to ensure the safety of animals and enhance the enjoyment of our visitors to the facility. Mr. Chairman, the pollution control section will implement guidance documents for the installation and decommissioning of underground and above-ground fuel storage tanks, including processes for addressing pollution cleanup. All contractors providing this service will be made aware and encouraged to agree to follow the guidance. The department will also identify pesticides known as contaminant groundwater. The department will identify pesticides known to contaminate groundwater and will develop new policies to either eliminate or reduce the use of these chemicals. Mr. Chairman, Animal Protection Section will continue to implement the Dogs Act 2008 with a view to improve the keeping of animals and promote the prevention of bites and injury. Veterinary services, with the addition of a veterinary officer, will move to improve the quantity and quality of local agricultural products and redefine an agricultural strategy to augment local production and improve food security. Mr. Chairman, in closing, I would like to thank the hard-working and dedicated members of staff in the Department of the Environment and Natural Resources, including Director Andrew Pettit, Dr. Tammy Warren, Dr. Sarah Manuel, Dr. Philippe Rougeau, Dr. Jonathan Nisbet, Dr. Ian Walker, Dr. Jeff Smith, Ms. Claire Jesse, Mr. John Edmonds, Mr. Tommy Sinclair, Dr. Mark Otterbridge, and Mr. Jeremy Medeiros, Ms. Maria Trott, and their valuable and able teams. It has been indeed a pleasure to work with them. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also, because this is the last part of the budget that I'll be presenting, is to thank the persons at the ministry who have assisted me since November, the PS, Rosie Azar, our controller, Miss Denise Mon, my assistant, Teresa Robinson, and all those who have aided me in the work that I've been doing for the past year. I could not have come up here and do the work I do without them. This is not a one-man or one-woman show as a minister. We do nothing without the help and support that they give, and I'm extremely grateful for all the people in all the departments, some of which are not being debated in this House, for the work they do to make sure that the Ministry of Home Affairs and all its related departments are serving the country well. So thank you to all of them. Mr. Chairman, with this comprehensive view of the department, which I've just completed, I move that the budget for Head 79 be approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. We're considering the Home Affairs, Heads 32 and 39, 32 and 79, found on B 308 and 315, respectively. It's a 3-hour debate. We have 2 hours remaining, and the Chair would like to recognize the Shadow Minister, the Honorable Sylvan Richards. Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair. I'll start off at Head 32, Department of Planning, found on pages B308 to B312, C15, and C20. As a former minister, I recognize the importance of the Department of Planning. I think that Bermuda aesthetically looks the way it does because of the some would say rather stringent planning policies that we have in place and that are rigorously enforced. And when I travel to other countries is when I really notice the difference between how those countries look and how Bermuda look. Bermuda has a very orderly appearance. You know, you very rarely see residents located next to a shop that changes tires, next to a church, next to a supermarket. So it's really a testament to the planning department, the work that they do, and the policies and the laws that we have in place to make Bermuda look aesthetically pleasing, which is a benefit to the country. In going through the budget book, the minister answered quite a few of my questions. So that's a compliment to the civil servants who put the budget book together and the brief. No, they really did do a good job. I had noted that the overall expenditures were up 2% in 2019, 2020, and that's because of the negotiated 2% salary increase. On page B309, under training, the budget has decreased in 67% from 18,000 to 6,000. One of the questions I had was why the decrease, and I believe the minister mentioned in his brief that it was due to one-off scaffolding training, which is completed, so there's no longer the need to have that same level of funding. Also, on page B309, expenditures by object code, under professional services, it's showing a 44% decrease from 52,000 to 29,000. The minister may have mentioned it in his brief, but there's a lot of information coming at you, so I may not have picked it up. So I'm curious as to the reason for that particular decrease in funding, expenses from 52,000 to 29,000. I noted on page B310, under revenue summary, that cost center 8127, the building permit fees are remaining flat. And also under cost center 8128, condo registrations, there was nothing anticipated in 2018, 2019. So I'm curious why there are no condo registrations anticipated for the upcoming year. And I'm curious if is this because of the glut of unsold condos currently in the market. Then it was mentioned that overall revenues projected to decrease 4% in 2019, 2020. In terms of the employee numbers found on page B310, the number of employees are projected to remain flat at 33. I did note that salaries are projected to increase by 138,000 in 2019, 2020. The minister mentioned in his brief that there are plans to hire, I believe he said, a planner and a heritage officer, and the director is still on an acting basis. I would like to hear a bit more about the heritage officer and what his duties are. On page B311, I notice under forward planning, the Northeast Hamilton plan, and I believe the minister mentioned that it's either nearing completion or it's completed. If I could get a little bit more information about that, a little bit more color around the Northeast Hamilton plan, that would be helpful. I know that there's a lot of business over there that for years have felt that they were kind of neglected and that they weren't getting the attention that they deserve. So I would like to hear a bit more about the Northeast Hamilton plan. On page C15, capital acquisitions, for Center 76392, planning development. The 2018-2019 original estimate was $413,000, but it was revised in 2018-2019. The estimate is $150,000. And for 2019 to 2020, the estimate is $402,000. I'm curious what accounts for the increase from the 2018-19 revised estimate figure. So I can get that information would be helpful. And on page C20, under grants and contributions, Cost Center 7026, the Heritage Fund. I took note in the budget book that for 2019-2020, this estimate was reduced from $10,000 to $5,000. If I recall correctly, I think the Heritage Fund has to do with people who live in listed homes and the funding that is available for renovations and whatnot. But I would like to get a bit more information about that, a bit more clarity about the Heritage Fund, what it does, and if it is for the Bermudians and people who live in listed buildings, listed houses, has thought been given to increasing that amount and also making it more widely known that those funds are available. It may be a case that those funds are being reduced because nobody's using them. I don't know. So I would be interested to hear why the decrease in those funds. Still on Head 32 planning, under performance measures, the minister mentioned that all vacant posts will be filled. I would like to hear a bit more about what those vacant posts are and what's being done to advertise those posts. Are we looking for locals? Are we looking to bring in people from overseas? What the skill set is for those particular posts that are looking to be filled. And then the minister mentioned completion of the draft Northeast Hamilton plan, that's going to be released for public consultation. And I believe he mentioned that it will go live in September of 2019. So I'd like to hear a bit more about that. Then the minister mentioned the Development and Planning Amendment Act. I guess that's something that's being worked on, and the Bermuda plan that is going out to consultation. So if I can get a bit more color around those, it will be very helpful. I'll take my seat now and get those answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadow Minister. Is any other member care to speak to heads 32 and 79? Chair recognizes the member from constituency number 19, Honorable Member Atherton. You have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I have just a couple questions, and it relates to some of the information, which I must admit I appreciate the minister giving us some of the flavor. With respect to this is on B311. They're talking about the percentage completion of community engagement with parish councils and initiation of community action plans. And it's indicating that it's obviously going up from the 30%, 30%, and 40%. And I just wondered if the minister could indicate to us how many parish councils are actually active, and if, and I went over to, I think it's C18, and we show that in terms of parish councils, that the numbers have now gone up. I think it was 70. Found it. Okay, I'm starting off on B31, and this is okay. And now I'm going to go to the. Yes, I'm just going to find it. I thought I turned the. I thought I turned the page over so that I could see it. I'll just find that. It's in the grants. Yes, it's on C20. So in C20, head 6918, there was an indication that, I mean, in 2017-18, it was a -9, and then in 2018-19, 70, and then 2019-20, 70. So I just wondered if the minister could indicate how many parishes do have active parish councils, and then if there are not parish councils in every parish, how is the local consultation achieved? Because remember, if you're looking at the performance measures, it's talking about community engagement, and we're only up to the 40% level. The other question that I had related to this was on C15, and there was this is under capital acquisitions, and this is head 76730, and there is a patrol vessel. Okay, and I just wondered, this is a new, this was something which was a 1819, and I just wondered if the ministry could indicate what is this for and what do they actually do. And I guess my question was, how does this potentially relate to the marine policing that's done by the regiment or the police, whichever one you're talking about. And I was curious about the medical equipment. This is also on C15, and if the minister or the ministry could just indicate what. This is on 76897.
Yes.
I was just curious as to what that was for. I mean, obviously, when you start having, you just have a piece of equipment and then nothing more. I know that the museum, they do lots of things when they have injured animals, et cetera, and so I was just curious. My other question then relates to, let's see. This was then relating to the, I'm going now to the planning system. This is also on C15, and this is cost center, this is cost center 76392, and this is where we have the planning development. I know the minister was, and I tried to write the name down. It sounded like Henna Golf, but I'm not sure what actually the equipment is, but it did sound like that. And so I guess I was curious that I think the minister said that 200,000 is going to be carried over into 2019, and that's how come we get 402,000 to complete in September 2019. So I just wondered, from the perspective of, I know this planning development is so important to Bermuda. I just wondered if the minister could perhaps just expand a little bit on what how far we've gotten and what actual things will be done in 2019. And I think those were the questions that I had. And I'll sit down, and I'm sure after the minister answers those questions, if there's some more, I'm sure my colleague might have some more, and so might I. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other member care to speak to heads 32 and 79? We're dealing with home affairs. 2 heads, 3 hours allocated. This debate will go to 12:30 and then resume for another 45 minutes at 2 o'clock. Minister, would you answer those questions that were presented?
Mr. Chair, I can ask a question just while it's getting.
Go ahead. The chair recognizes the opposition leader. Honorable member, you have the floor.
Yes, sorry, just coming in from a meeting, so my apologies. There was a question I did hear briefly under Head 79 and the marine management of our waters. Back some time ago, there was a lot of talk and a lot of action around an invasive species, which is the lionfish. And he just slightly touched on that. Yes. I was curious as to, in his brief, as to what are some of the other measures that we are doing. Have we been working with, I know that there's a private organization out there, and they actually go out and have a scuba diving team that actually go out, and I talk to them quite often. A couple of them from St. George's, by the way, Chair.
And tournaments.
Yes, and tournaments. I know that the Shadow participated at one time in being able to eat these lionfish, properly scaling them and filleting them and the likes. I was just curious as to whether or not we were upping the ante on this invasive species, especially when Bermudians enjoy snapper and grouper as a real staple in their diet here. We're well known for that. Those are the particular local fish that are targeted by the lionfish. And I was hoping that maybe we've put some more money towards this here, maybe looking at some of the other new technologies. I've seen, obviously you go online, you can see all kinds of things that's being done around the world on how to cull this invasive species. And interestingly enough, with this species, we thought that they would not have been so far inshore, and now we're finding out that these things are very close inshore, as well as out in deeper parts of the waters. If there was anything else going on there that we were targeting, this is a real menace for a very small island like us. Some of the larger islands, they've got a wider water base, landmass, water mass there. What are we doing about it if there's anything new happening? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member care to address heads 32, 79? Honorable Shadow Minister Richards, constituency number 7, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I had neglected. Basically what I'm doing, Deputy Chair, is I'm focusing right now on planning. I know my colleague just asked an environment question, but I split it up into 2.
Go ahead.
So that's okay.
That's all right. Both heads on the floor, so you can flip back and forth. That's fine.
Right. Because I have another set of questions on the head 79 I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
So in terms of planning, the revenue 8123 planning application fees. Page B310.
Yes.
That there is a 24% decrease in revenues, which amounts to about 114,000. So I think the minister mentioned in his brief that it's due to a reduction in major projects. The question that I had is this indicative of a downturn in construction, overall construction activity? So if there's going to be a decrease in major projects, is there anticipation of there being smaller projects to kind of pick up the slack? So I would like to get a bit more color around that. Thank you.
Okay. We're entertaining heads 32 and 79 in Committee of Supply. Any other member care to address the chair? Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Number of different questions, particularly in the area of planning came up, which I'm going to endeavor to provide answers to honorable members. There was a question, Mr. Chairman, just to advise. There was a question that came up about engagement with parish councils. Parish councils are not actually under this particular head. They're under Ministry Home Affairs. So I can perhaps provide an answer to the honorable member after the debate on that. But
point of clarification. If I'm looking at the Department of Planning book and I'm looking at the head on B311, I don't understand why you're saying that they don't come under this particular ministry. And then if I go afterwards.
Point of clarification. That
Minister?
I didn't say it wasn't under business ministry, is that we're not discussing this department where the responsibilities of parish councils are under the ministry. But there are some, so a full fleshed out answer to the question wouldn't come under this particular head. But I'm happy to give an answer to the honorable member if she has some other questions about parish councils subsequent to this debate. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not denying the member the answer, but it's not a subject of this particular head, parish councils.
Thank you. Member, will you accept a reply to your question outside of this particular head? It doesn't fall under this head.
Well, I guess my question becomes, we were doing head 32, which is planning. Yes. We then go to page B311.
The output measures.
So I don't understand how it's not under this head. There is just, I don't understand it. It's in the book. It says it's under this head. And I mean, I'm thinking about all those people out there that see these output measures and try and get a feel for what's happening in ministries. And if you start to say that information that's here does not reflect the way people operate, then why do we have these things?
Minister?
I will provide an answer for the member, since the member is adamant that it should be done under this. I will give her an answer, but I was just trying to be helpful, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
But I will endeavor, since
during the course of the debate, yes?
Yeah, in the course of the debate. I will give an answer.
All right. Thank you. Any member from constituency 19? I hope that suffices. The minister's given an undertaking during this debate to provide that answer, notwithstanding the output measures being listed and coming under a different head. But any other member care to speak to head 32 or 79? Minister, you continue on.
Thank you. I will endeavor. There are a number of questions that came under planning, which I will begin to endeavor to answer for members. There was a question around professional services, filling of posts, and why certain posts were not being filled due to my report that there was a reduction. Well, the filling of these posts will not be needed for the services that were originally tasked. So we're not going to have to fill those posts at all this upcoming year. Okay. There was questions around building permit fees. The answer to that is that yes, the building permit fees remain stable for the number of applications that are made. There was also a question around condo registrations. And the answer is yes, and it's due to flattening of sales of condos, why perhaps condo registration, the revenue from that is going down. There were some questions around salaries, particularly relation to the planner, heritage officer, and director. The heritage officer has been vacant for a number of years. and their role is to manage listed buildings, and also they play a role with the overseeing of the World Heritage Site designation in St. George's. Another question was about the Northeast Hamilton Plan, and I did recall that the honorable member may have said something about it being available September 2019. That plan is currently, work is being done to make that, to be able to come as soon as possible to like the public with that plan. We're quite pleased with it. It's at a very final stage, so you perhaps will see within the next few months that that plan will be publicly available for some public review and consultation. There were some questions around Energov, the new planning system. And I know it was in relation to the fact that there was about $400,000 or so allocated, and we're only using about 200,000 of that, and it's going to be, and it's a carryover figure, so we're only using a certain amount. The answer to that is that currently, the work that has been done is there has been implementation of, well, there's been deployment of the plan, the actual system, and we're now going through customization due to user acceptance testing, because that helps to customize and make sure that the plan, the actual system will be ready when it goes live later this year. So there's a lot of interaction with, there is work going on to make sure that we have a system that responds to the types of inquiries and that the public will make using it. So there's some levels of customization in reference to they've deployed the system, but now they're doing user acceptance testing so that any of the types of ways that those who will be engaging it, which will be stakeholders, will be using it, we can customize the system for those needs. And so that's what's going on right now. And again, our goal is to have that live by September of 2019. And that will replace the BMIS system as I outlined in my statement. So what we're doing now with the user acceptance testing, that will dictate the customization and the ultimate implementation of what it's going to look like once it's implemented. There were some questions around the Bermuda plan. The Bermuda plan for 2018 has been in a period now since for the past almost 3 months now, where public consultation is available. It means that persons can view it, make comment, put forth any objections, as well as make any applications for rezoning. That is going on right now, and that is a period that's going on right now, and I believe the end of the month. Actually, I'm sorry, today is the date that period ends, and that's been going on since December. So there's been a 3-month period. So that day actually is today, where that will end. And then, obviously, any of the, depending on any of the submissions, they may go to tribunal. And the tribunal will make recommendations to the minister. Let me see. As relates to the Parish Council matter, just for the members, for the members of the system, I believe the member was referring to something that was mentioned in the output measures in relation to parish councils under 32. There is, although the parish councils are managed or are specifically under the ministry, there obviously is interaction with the parish councils with the planning department. The Department of Planning has reached out to all the councils at the beginning of the year, and the parish, and that engagement has commenced with various councils in relation to planning issues. They're, just again, for information, all of the councils are active. There aren't any councils that are not active at the moment. There are, one for each parish, and they're all active. as a minister who appoints persons, I've been dealing with appointments since the end of this year, last year into this year, about appointments to all the councils. So they're all functioning. There was a question in relation to the Heritage Fund, the fact that it was reduced from 10,000 to 5,000. That provides interest, that supports interest-free loans for those who need to do specific renovations or changes to a house or a building that may be listed. I think there's been a reduction in the level of requests, so that is corresponded with the reduction of funding that we're providing to that. I will sit down now and take any other, perhaps there are some clarifications or persons may have missed your question. Happy to hear any clarifications that you may want on any of the questions that already have been answered around planning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr.
Address the chair, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
We recognize the member from constituency 19. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for clarification, the reason I was asking the question about how many parish councils were active and whether because the performance measures indicated that there was going to be the community engagement, and the target outcome was only 40%. And I was just, it just seemed to me that if you're trying to get the community engagement and you now have 9 active councils, it just seemed surprising that a target of 40% would deem to be a performance measure target.
Thank you.
And I just wondered if the minister would perhaps clarify as to whether, although he's made the appointments, whether how long they've actually been active, because sometimes when they're just getting up, that's why a performance measure of 40% might be a suitable target.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Member. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member from constituency 23.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm on page B310 in respect of the Department of Planning. And I know my honourable colleague asked about the downturn, which the minister did mention in his brief, with respect to planning application fees. And there's going to be a 24% decrease, or $114,000. However, when I look at 8127, the building permit fees, the amount is static. It's $575 year on year. So the question begs, if there are going to be far fewer planning application fees anticipated, then the correlation between planning applications and building permit, there must be some. So I'm just curious as to how it's anticipated that the building permit fees are going to be the same as last year when the actual applications for new permits, planning applications, are significantly, there's going to be a significant downturn. It would seem to me that there should be a correlation between those two numbers. So if you're not anticipating that many planning application fees, then it might follow that your building permit fees will also decrease, unless the permit fees have gone up for fewer applications. But in terms of the correlation, I just need some clarity if I can get that. Also, I'm concerned about the development applications, the percentages of applications determined within 12 weeks. And it seems to be consistently low. For the actual outcome for 17-18 was only 57%. This is on page B311. Yeah, towards the bottom, under business unit development applications. And it indicated that 57% in 17-18 was determined within a 12-week period of time. 65% was determined within a 12-week period of time for 18-19, and there's a projected 80% for 19-20. The question is a 12-week period of time realistic? Should we be adjusting the time frame, or is it acceptable to say that we're only going to hit 57%, 65%, or 80% of the target, does it make sense to adjust the target to something that's more realistic so that people who are making applications get some kind of reasonable expectation within a certain period of time? And I say that if you know that you're putting in an application, 12 weeks is is the destined time, and you're only 80% there, or you were only 65% there on a revised basis for 18-19, are we being realistic with respect to the 12-week time frame?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is any other member? Constituency 19, Honourable Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And following on what my colleague just asked, I'm looking on B310, and I see that the elevator licenses, the revenue source is going up, and I just wonder if the minister could confirm this, I presume, is in anticipation that the construction that's out there right now, because he's already indicated
their own work on caring for the animals. That's what that purchase of that medical equipment is for. That was listed in the budget book. Another question in relation to the environment. This is environment questions, of course. What efforts are being made to control invasive lionfish? I believe that came maybe from the opposition leader. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources has expanded the lionfish, the licensing for recreational divers program to allow the selling of lionfish to local markets. This is to encourage continued supply of lionfish for grocery stores, restaurants, and continues to work with that task force to make sure that's being done and to increase the activity. So so essentially the environment, the department is working with those who are involved with the lionfish effort to issue licenses so that there can be as much activity as possible with eradicating them and ensuring that meat, what's byproduct that can be made available to those who desire to have it, such as in the grocery stores and restaurants and perhaps a little market. An entrepreneurial effort is helping some of those people who are perhaps doing it out of certainly a cause of their concern for the environment around it, but also there's a little bit of commercial incentive to be involved as well. There was Mr. Chairman, there's a question asked about the patrol vessel and the $58,000 related to that and what it was for. The funds are allowed for repairs and augmentation to the department's vessel, specifically fisheries warden's vessel, and the replacement radar and the replacement of its radar and associated equipment to ensure nighttime surveillance. Marine Heritage Section boat, replacement of its engines to allow for the boat to function and undertake marine surveys of wrecks. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources works closely with the Marine Police section of the Bermuda Police Service. Obviously, there's a transition going on there, but that is the activity and the funding to support our vessels so that we can work closely with them. There was question concerning elevators and the fees around elevators. I believe that was related to on page B310, program number 8517. I think it has to do with there are new elevators coming online. You know, there are businesses that will replace their elevators as well. So that will increase, that will add to the new revenue. Some are obviously reached their maturity date and they're being replaced by building. It's not only associated with new development, there's often elevators are being replaced out in the general environment, and that may contribute to an uptick in licensing. And of course, there is the new airport, and there's also St. Regis projects. And the combined with the efficient management of existing licenses, as I've mentioned, this will contribute to a change in the revenue around the elevator licenses. There were some questions related to planning in relation to building permits, and the honorable member had some question about the correlation between building permits and planning, and that perhaps there should be a greater correlation in revenue. I think it should be understood for the benefit of the public as well as members of the House that those are two separate application processes, and you may have somebody who gets their planning permission but might delay getting their building permit for whatever reason. So sometimes there isn't a correlation. Maybe one year they'll get their planning permission, and maybe next year they'll get their building permit. So it might not actually be an alignment in correlation. I'm not saying that what your suggestion isn't a logical assumption. It is, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But in relation to building permits can be issued for works that don't require planning application. So they don't have to make a planning application to get a building permit, such as a general development order or permanent development. There is not a direct correlation. So those are two separate planning processes, applications. So I know obviously people who make planning applications ultimately go for a building application, but it may be that somebody only has to get the building application, or they may, as I said, delay their building application for whatever reason. On B311, there was a question in relation to about whether the 12-week time for a turnaround is realistic, and perhaps due to the changes in the output measures, there should be perhaps an adjustment in that 12-week requirement for turnaround. We believe that's reasonable, that 12 weeks, and due to there's been a decreased number in applications, and you would note that that number is actually going up, as so due to the decreased number of applications, there's been a higher percentage in the performance of that. And the new system, Energov, will make processing more efficient and allow for smarter vetting of applications and processing. So we're confident that that 12-week number is realistic to be met. Yes, reasonably realistic. There was another question, I think, to do with revenue. Noted the 24% decrease in revenue from planning applications. This is not due to all applications, just big project slowdown. Big projects involve a large amount of square footage, which determines how fees are calculated. thus the need for and a need for an environmental impact assessment. So, yes, there's a decrease in the bigger applications, but how planning fees are applied is not just because of each individual. It's got to do with the amount of square footage that are being applied for. So a big application would obviously generate greater revenue because it's a larger square footage of a project. You might have a number of smaller projects, but because of the square footage is smaller, they don't have as high a revenue potential as a bigger project. So, and also there is more into a large project because of the environmental impact assessments and other things that may have to be associated with that, that also contributes to greater revenue requirements, or revenue opportunities, I should say. I will stop there because I'm sure if I haven't answered anything, honorable members will bring it to my attention. But for the sake of continuing the discussion, I'll sit down and allow for any further questions.
And before we go any further, the Chair would like to recognize the presence of a former member of the legislature and also former Minister of the Environment, Mr. Arthur Hudson. And thank you for taking the time to visit the chamber today. Floor would like to recognize the Shadow Minister for the Environment.
Thank you, Acting Chair.
Richards.
I have two last questions regarding planning, and then I would like to move on to Head 79, which is the Environment and Natural Resources. So my first question is, the Minister mentioned that the Heritage Officer post had been vacant for a number of years. I'm curious how many years that post had been vacant and when it's going to be filled. He did mention that the Heritage Officer has oversight of the World Heritage Site. That's been very topical here lately, especially with what's going on down in St. George's. So I really would like to see that position filled, so I'm curious what the timetable is on that. The second question had to do with the lionfish. Right around the time of the America's Cup, when I was minister, I was taken down to Aerial Sands, and I met some very, very interesting young scientists. Some had background with NASA, some had background with MIT, and Land Rover Bar was actually sponsoring an underwater ROV vehicle that was being developed to catch a lionfish. And they actually had a prototype that they put into the salt pool down there and basically showed how this ROV can sneak up on lionfish and stun them and then suck them in. So I'm curious if that project is still ongoing. Where is it? Because it had a lot of potential to really assist us in our lionfish remediation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadow Minister. The floor recognizes the honourable member from constituency number 23, Ms. Gordon-Pampley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While the honourable member is getting the responses from his technical officers, I just had one more question on page B309, and that is with respect to professional services under the subjective analysis, in which there was $29,000 estimated. The minister indicated, he responded earlier, that there were some positions, professional services, that would not be needed. I wonder if you could just be a little bit, give us a little bit of clarity with respect to which positions are not going to be filled in that particular professional fees.
We're on heads 32 and 79. Any other members care to address the floor? Minister?
Mr. Chairman, just to continue on, the question of the honourable member, constituency 23, in relation to the professional services point. The reason that perhaps her question arises, and it can be gleaned from the statement made in my brief, is that those positions they're the ones we're currently seeking to fill. We're actively filling them. And up to this point, we have pursued getting consultants to fulfill those roles that you are referring to, but now we're actively filling them. Yeah, right. So we don't need that expenditure. Professional services, I'll just reread the section and perhaps it'll provide some clarity for the honorable member. Professional services found on line 7 has been decreased by 23,000 or 40% over the past financial year. Consultants were recruited to fulfill certain functions because of the inability to fill the substantive posts. It is anticipated in the next year we will have all those posts filled, thereby reducing the need for that expenditure on professional services. So we're expecting to fill them. So that will then remove that we are not going to have to spend that $23,000 that is allocated in the budget.
I think the shadow minister has
Sure.
has an additional question to follow on to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious as to which posts. I mean, I realize the construct of a post is not filled. You're going to find somebody for the substantive post, and it'll come up in the salaries line, presumably, and it'll come out of the professional services consultants. Just carrying on until he gets back.
Mm-hmm.
However, I just wonder which post is now being filled by a consultant that will become substantive such that the consultant will no longer be needed. I'm just curious as to which posts.
Okay, thank you. Any other member care to address the chair with regards to Head 32 and 79? Minister?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Specific posts are the heritage officer and a planner. Okay.
Thank you.
I will continue to answer some of the questions raised, Mr. Chairman, if you allow. There was the honorable member who sits for constituency 7 brought up a matter concerning lionfish and robotics and a robotics demonstration that he experienced while minister. Actually, it sounds quite interesting. Perhaps I'll have the opportunity to see that myself. Yes.
Point of clarification?
If I can just clarify that particular program with the robotics was actually the Land Rover Barth from the America's Cup team. That was one of their legacy projects. They sponsored the whole thing, so it's really quite exciting, quite interesting, and hopefully it is continuing.
Thank you. I will inquire about that, but for the benefit of an answer for you from the department, this was a private sector initiative that the department was very supportive of. There were field trials field trials were completed, and the department doesn't have an update at this time, but further inquiries will be made in due course. So I will undertake to actually follow up on that, because it sounds very interesting, and certainly if it's going to work alongside our efforts to deal with the lionfish, it's something that we'll look at, and priorities permitting, we'll see what we can do to work with that private sector provider to see what we can do. Were there any other? I don't know if there are any other questions. Okay, I answered the honorable member's question. It was Heritage Office and Planner was the actual. Well, I'll sit down if honorable member.
Continue. Member from constituency 7, you have the floor.
Yeah, my question was based around the Heritage Officer. When is that post going to be filled? How long had the post been vacant? Because it's very important because it pertains to the World Heritage Site in St. George's.
Minister?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you for clarification, honorable member. 2 years vacant, and it's currently filled temporarily by temporarily who is at this very moment fully immersed in the work of that office. and is working with the key stakeholders. I know this for a fact because we've been, as you would appreciate, Mr. Chairman and honorable member, that the work in St. George's as relates to the preservation of the World Heritage Site is a priority for this government, and we are actively making sure that that work's done. It is the Department of Planning which is leading the efforts to devise the World Heritage Management Plan, which is very much required. So that temporary relief person is fully engaged and busy. But the plan is to fill it, to fill that post over the next, certainly as soon as possible, as the process permits.
Thank you, Minister. And any additional assistance would always be greatly appreciated in St. George. Any other member care to address the board? We're coming up on 12:15, and we have, in essence, after lunch, we have an hour left in this debate. We're on Head 32 and 79. I know, Shadow Minister, you had indicated you want to focus on Head 79. Both heads are still on the floor. Continue.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair. Yes, I'm going to focus now, turn my attention to Head 79, the Environment and Natural Resources. The Minister had mentioned B316, yeah, Head 79. I'm actually going to go to page B317 because I didn't have any questions on B316, the expenditures per business unit per se, at least not at this juncture. But on page B317, expenditures by object code, salaries are projected to increase 5%, or $238,000, while the number of employees are projected to remain flat. And wages are projected to increase 11%, or $130,000. So when you add those two together, it's a combined total of salaries and wages of up $368,000 in 2019-2020. I believe the minister mentioned in his opening remarks that this was due to an allocation of funds. Maybe I was confused by that. If he could just kind of clarify that up, that would be helpful. Also on page B317, the insurance cost. You know, I'm an insurance man, so I'm always looking at cost of insurance. And most times, insurance never goes down, it always goes up. So I was curious about the 62% decrease in the insurance expenditures from $13,000 to $5,000. I think the minister may have mentioned that it's due to a reduction in the department's grants and contributions. So I'm a little confused by that. So if I can get some clarity on the reduction, the cost, the reason for the reduction in the insurance cost, that would be helpful. Also on page B317, grants and contributions, it's showing that there's a 37% decrease in grants and contributions from $403,000 to $253,000. I believe the minister mentioned that there is a marine conservation grant being eliminated. I would like to find out why that's being eliminated, and are there any other grants that are being eliminated, and if there are any grants being put in its place. Is there a refocusing of efforts? So if I can get some information around that, that would be helpful. Moving to page 318, B318, the revenue summary. Looking at Cost Center 8493, dog licenses, and also 8495 BPO dog licenses. I must admit I'm a little fuzzy on what the differences are between the two, but I have noticed that dog licenses, the revenue is projected to decrease 51% from $536,000 in 2018-2019 to $236,000 in 2019-2020. I'm curious why the revenues are projected to decrease by 51%. I believe the minister mentioned in his comments that the goal is to get every dog in Bermuda licensed. So I would like to kind of reconcile those two. And once again, 8495 BPO dog licenses, the revenue from these licenses is increasing from zero in 2018, 2019 to $70,000 in 2019, 2020. So it's going from $0 to $70,000. If I can get some answers as to what's the difference between these two licenses and what the increase from $0 to $70,000 for these BPO dog licenses, what is that attributed to? And then the overall revenues are projected to decrease 9% in 2019, 2020. So I'm just confused, why some of the revenues are going down, but we're trying to get every dog licensed, and so I'd like to get some clarity on that. I must say that I was very pleased when the Dog Amendment Act was amended to allow for the reduction in the confiscation of what were called dangerous breeds, and I'm glad to see that the overall number of euthanizations has gone down. I know when I was minister, that was a very vexing issue for myself and for the department. So I'm glad that. I
think you have some sympathies when it comes to this consideration of line items.
Yeah. It was very difficult for a number of different ministers, not just including myself. Turning to page B319, the employee numbers. The number of employees are projected to remain flat at 79. The minister mentioned that there were a number of vacancies that are being filled. I think he mentioned the hydrogeologist. There was a foreman post that was being filled. I didn't get exactly what that was, if I could find out what that post is. And there was a new veterinary officer post being finalized. I would like to find out how long has that post been vacant and what is the focus of this veterinary officer. I seem to recall that part of the remit of the veterinary officer was to increase milk production amongst our local cow herd and to reduce disease amongst the cow herd. I'm curious what other responsibilities that veterinary officer post would be responsible for. I'm going to page B321 now, performance measures, and I'm looking at business unit 89040, marine enforcement, which references the number of vessels searched at sea. The 2018-2019 original forecast is for 500 searches, and the 2019-2020 target outcome for searches is 450. I am a bit surprised that this number is projected to decrease. I would like to find out why it's decreasing by 50 number of searches. And then, there's been talk about the Bermuda Regiment having a role to play in marine enforcement. So I would like to get some information about whether that is something that the ministry is looking at, beefing up the role of the regiment to perhaps play a more significant part in overall marine enforcement. In business segment 89070, it kind of ties into my earlier questions about dogs. It says that the number of dogs licensed will increase from 4,050 in 2018-2019 to $4,600 in 2019-2020. However, as I stated, the revenues from dog licenses 2019-2020 projected to decrease 51%. So if I can get some clarification on that, it ties in. On page B323, number 89110, Bermuda Aquarium, Marine, and Zoo Administration. It shows that students involved in the BAMZ offerings is up from 7,500 in 2018-2019 to 8,250 in 2019-2020. I believe the minister mentioned that this involves Trunk Island, classes at Trunk Island, which is tied to the Cambridge curriculum, and that demand for these classes continue to be strong. I'm very encouraged by that. I think the more our young people are made aware of the importance of protecting our marine environment, that's a good thing. I know my younger nephew, young Trey Vance, is heavily involved in that program. He enjoys getting up on a Saturday and going down to the aquarium and assisting down there. So I think that's a very good program, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, what they're looking to do with that program. I make note on page C15, capital acquisition, that nothing is budgeted for 2019-2020. The minister made reference to that in his remarks and said that the department had taken possession of 2 replacement vans, but that they were in a good position in terms of their equipment, so there's no need for capital expenditure. And on page C20, under grants and contributions, under 7004, the BIOS environmental study, the 2019-2020 estimate is 0, whereas the prior year budget was $150,000. So I'm curious what the reasoning is for that, why there's a 0 budget for this year. I'll take my seat at this point and get answers to those questions. I'm sure my colleagues will have other questions. Thank you, Acting Chair.
At 12:25, we're still on heads 32 and 79, considering Ministry of Home Affairs, those 2 heads within Home Affairs. Any other member? Oh, member from constituency 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on B318, and this is relating to the revenue source, and the head is 8649 agricultural produce, and it's showing the revenue going up from 25,000 up to 35, and then suggesting that it's going up to 42. And I just wondered if the minister could just clarify what this is. I think I know, but I think for the public out there, recognizing that food and food sources are so important to Bermuda, and we're trying to encourage this, it would be nice to understand what the ministry is doing and how this revenue is going up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member care to address heads 32 and 79? As we wait for the minister, then we'll call on the minister to answer a few questions. Minister?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question was raised by the honorable member who speaks for the environment concerning insurance costs and why they're going down. Well, the department has less vehicles, and so that means that there's less requirement to provide insurance coverage for that which we would normally have done so. That's the main reason for that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask your indulgence. I do have a number of our answers to obviously respond to. Would it be appropriate to do that after lunch when I have more time? I know there's a few minutes left on the clock.
Go ahead, Minister. You can.
All right. Well, let me get some more answers for a few minutes. Or would you? Are you?
You can move.
Okay, thank you.
You're acting premier right now, so
yes,
you can exercise that rule.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I do move that we adjourn for lunch until 2 p.m.
Thank you. And we'll resume with heads 32 and 79 at 2 p.m. with 45 minutes remaining. Thank you. And the time will be adjusted to allow for that little bit of lunch. Thank you. Sergeant at Arms? And we'll adjourn until 2 p.m.